welcome to Sunday School with Ms. Barbara. I am Ms. Barbara. I hope that you're having a good Sunday, or Monday, or Tuesday, or Wednesday, or whichever day it is that you were watching this, because you know what? You can worship God and learn about God and Jesus any day of the week. It doesn't have to be just on a Sunday. Sometimes we like to carve out Sundays just for that time. But you can have time for Jesus any time of the day, any time of the week, or the month, or the year. He loves it when we talk to him and when we learn about him all the time. But regardless of what day it is for you, I hope that you are having a good day. And I hope that you saw church this week, whether you saw it online or you got to see it in person. Either way, I hope that you got a chance to see some form of church. How are you at making promises? Are you good at those? Do you make lots of promises, or do you save promises for special things? Which one do you do? Promises are very special. They are. So if we make a promise, we definitely want to keep it, don't we? We absolutely do. And do you know who always keeps his promises? God always keeps his promises no matter what, because he loves us so much and he doesn't want to let us down. And we here on earth, we try, don't we? We do. We try to keep our promises, but we're not as good as God, are we? We're not. So we're going to try really, really hard, and we're going to practice working on those promises. But God always keeps them no matter what. All right, let's start off today with today's Bible verse, okay?
This week's Bible verse is Matthew chapter 16, verses 15 through 18. Let's get started. He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it." This was the word of God.
Thank you, Sophia. She did an amazing job, didn't she? Sophia is a rising fifth grader at our church, and I think she did a beautiful job, and she read from her own Bible. Do you have a Bible at home? I bet that you do. If you don't have a Bible at home, I want you to let Miss Barbara know so that I can help find you a Bible that's just right for you. Did you know that there are different kinds of Bibles? There are Bibles for little people, and for medium-sized people, and for big people, and for teens, and for first graders, and for readers and not readers. There's all sorts of Bibles out there. And I hope that if you need a Bible, you will let me know. Okay. How about rainbows? Do you like rainbows? I love rainbows. Now, when I get to see rainbows, usually I just see kind of like a half of a rainbow. And those are pretty cool. And when do we see a rainbow? After it what? After it rains, rainbow. We see it after it rains and the sun comes out. Now, if you're super lucky, you can see a whole rainbow like this one. The Conley family sent me that one, and I love it. It goes over top of their house. Have you ever seen one over top of your house? Have you ever seen a whole rainbow? Like you can see the whole arch like this. You get to see all sides of it and all the colors. Now, if you are super duper duper lucky, you can see a double rainbow. Have you ever seen one of those? I've seen those a couple of times, and it's like two rainbows. Have you ever seen that before? Rainbows are such special, amazing things. Why do you think they're so special? Can you think of some reasons why a rainbow is special? They're really big. Why else? They're very colorful. They don't last very long, do they? They could stay out, some maybe for a couple minutes. I've seen them maybe for a half hour. I've never seen them much longer than that, so you don't get them for a super long time. So it's kind of a rare thing, right? And that's just it. We kind of hope for them, don't we? That's what makes them very, very special, isn't it? But now we know those are special things. And everybody sees that about them. They're big and they're pretty and they're rare and they don't last for very long. But we as Christians see something else in a rainbow that makes it special. What do we see? We see a what? A promise from God. We see God's what? His love for us. Do you see that in a rainbow? Because that's what I see in a rainbow. And sometimes when you're having just a bad day or something, and the rain you kind of feel the rain, don't you? It kind of makes you sometimes feel sad, kind of like the sky is sad and you feel sad. And then the rain goes away, or the storm goes away, and out comes a rainbow. And it kind of makes me think God is telling me, it's okay. We're all okay. I promise I love you. And I love seeing that. And it makes me feel so very good. God has made his people many, many promises. We read about those in the Bible, and we know that he keeps all of them. And last week, do you remember the promise that we talked about? That he would turn sadness into joy. That when we are very sad, that no matter how sad we feel, God is there, and God's going to turn that around for us. Because we have what? Because we have him. Because we have Jesus. Because we know that there's a happy ending to our story, don't we? So this week, we're going to talk about his promise to our church. Yeah. Now we have a pretty church building. And I bet if you don't go to my church, you have a pretty church building. Or maybe you've been to grandma's church. Is that a pretty church building? Or grandpa's church, or your aunt's church, or an uncle's church? I used to love to go to church with my great aunt. And it was like a little church. It wasn't a big one. It was so pretty and had these most beautiful stained glass windows. And did your church have stained glass windows? And our church had a red door. It has a red door. Did your church have a red door? There are lots of things about the church building that make it so very pretty. But is it about the building that is what Jesus was talking about when he's talking to Peter and the other disciples that Sophia read? Is he talking about the wood and the bricks and the stained glass? No, he's not talking about that at all, is he? He's talking about what? The people of faith in there, right? The people are the church. He was talking about the foundation. He said, on this foundation, on you, Peter, I'm going to build my church. So are they going to build a church on top of Peter's head? On top of his shoulders? No, that's not. So what is a foundation? Do you know? That's a big word. I think that we better ask a big kid. I think so.
Guys, my name is Taylor, and today I'm going to be talking to you all about the word foundation. Foundation can mean two different things. It can mean like the foundation of your house, and that has to be sturdy, stable, and strong so it can hold it up from collapsing. Think of it as you building your Lego set. You don't want it to fall, so it has to be strong and stable so it doesn't just collapse and you have to rebuild it, because we don't like that. The same thing is true about our faith in God. Having a foundation of faith means knowing who Jesus is and how to spread his love. If you know Jesus and have faith that he is real, that sets a good foundation in your heart so that you can learn all the awesome things God has for you and the plans he's made for your life. Things won't always be easy. There will be times when you're sad or angry or maybe even confused about things that are happening. These are the times when you need God the most. Sometimes it might feel silly. It might not mean a big deal to the world, but if it means something to you, it always means something to God. If you're having a hard time opening up to him, it's easier to start with telling him the small things that happen, and that will build up and help you to talk about the big things. God is always there for you, and no matter what it is, it's okay for you to pray to him about. He's always listening to you, no matter what. With a strong foundation, your faith can stand strong just like the tallest Lego set in the world. How cool is that?
Thank you so much, Taylor. Did that help you? It helped me. You know what I really like that she said? She said, if it's important to you, it's important to God. That is so very, very true. Sometimes we think whatever it is we're thinking or feeling, well, God probably doesn't care about that because it might seem silly. But that's not true at all. He does care. He loves us. He loves every part of us. And if we have him there, we can stand super strong on him because he is our foundation. Taylor, thank you so much for helping to explain foundation to us. Now, I love the song in church called The Church is One Foundation, and it's one of my favorite hymns, but I thought instead of singing that song to you, I thought that I might choose a song that you might like a little bit better and that might stick in your brain a little bit more. So I asked the Sunbeam Singers to sing a special song for you this week. Singing that song as a child. I loved it. I loved it. Thank you, Sunbeam Singers, for a beautiful job on I Am the Church, because I am the church and you are the church and we are the church together. It sounds like kind of maybe a silly song, but it's a very true song, and it's a great way for us to remember that we are the church, not just the building, the people inside the building. That is who the church is. Now, did you know that Peter, the person that Jesus is talking to in the Bible verse that Sophia read for us, it wasn't perfect? He was a disciple, but he wasn't perfect. Are you perfect? Probably not. Am I perfect? No way. I'm not. Did you know that Jesus' church is full of people who aren't perfect? And he knew that. When he started the church, he knew that that's what it was going to be filled with. No one on this earth is perfect. The only perfect person was Jesus. And he was here for a little while, and then he went up with his Father in heaven. But what does Jesus ask us to do? He says, you don't have to be perfect because you're human, you're not going to be perfect. But what does he want us to do? It starts with an O. He wants us to obey. He does. He asked us to obey him and to listen and to follow him, to follow what it is that he was trying to teach us. Now that church, my church, your church, grandma's church, aunts and uncles' churches, everybody's church is made up of ordinary people. Okay? So, like this block, this is Tobias's block. I borrowed it. It's got a B on it for Miss Barbara. So let's say that this stone in the church is me. Well, that's going to be kind of a short church, isn't it? It's not going to be very much of a church. Well, let's see. I guess I could add, let's add Miss Joe. We better add Miss Joe there. All right. Well, again, kind of a short church. Maybe we should add Miss Dvorak. We should add her. All right. There we go. Well, we're getting a little bit bigger. Would you go to this church? It's kind of tiny. I don't know if you could fit in there. Who else should we add? I guess we better add Pastor Jay. He's probably important, you think? All right, well, okay, we're getting a little bigger there. Still not super huge church. Think anybody else needs to be added to the church? Who else do you think? Miss Verna from the nursery. We love her. We got to add her. All right, well, we're getting a little bigger. I feel like there's not enough room there. I mean, I don't know where we're gonna sit and be. What about Brian Greer? He leads the choir. We talked about him a couple weeks ago in one of our film strips. We better add him. Okay. Well, It's still not getting very big, is it? Well, let's add Mr. Dwayne. Sometimes we claim him, sometimes we don't, but we'll add him in there. And then, this could be you want to put the choir in there? Put the choir there. All right. So, when it was just me, it wasn't much of a church, was it? And if we added a couple more people, just a handful of people, it's a little bit bigger of a church. Pause. But if we keep adding and keep adding and keep adding and keep adding, what do we get? Look at this church. I took blocks and look at all this. It's not the world's fanciest block church, but it's a pretty big church. And even though it's just pretend, each of these blocks kind of reminds us of somebody in the church. Somebody, your Sunday school teacher, your youth helper, your Bible school teacher, the ladies down at the office, Miss Karen and Miss Vicky and Pastor Jay. And let's see, we got some room up here for Mr. Borak and Buzz and the greeters who are at the front of the church, and the nursery workers, Miss Brittany and Miss Kyle and Miss Verna. And there's lots of room for all the people that make up our church and your church. So while the building, the wood, the bricks, and the cement help hold a great place to keep us dry and safe and have really cool classrooms for us to use, and it's beautiful, that's not really what the church is it? The church is the people that are inside it. So I wanted to tell you the story a little bit more in depth about how the church got started. Sophia read it for us, the Bible verse, but let's read the story together from our book, God Always Keeps His Promises, and we're on page 140. I'm going to put in the comment section how you can get a copy of this book. You don't need a copy of this book, but it's a beautiful book, and it's really nice to read along with the Bible stories that are inside. So if you would like a copy, I'm going to give you a link that you can use to order your own. Okay? Listen along, please. Jesus turned to his disciples and asked them a question. Who do the people say I am? They were standing in the middle of the dust and the crowds of Caesarea Philippi. It was a busy place filled with travelers from all over the world. It was a bit wild and a bit crazy, like an ancient Las Vegas and New York City rolled into one. It was a place where people worshiped phony gods and followed false ways. Jesus chose that very place to ask his disciples, who do the people say I am? Jesus could have waited to ask his question till he was back in Galilee, where the crowds loved and adored and cheered for him. But he didn't. He could have asked it after he miraculously fed 5,000 people or healed the blind and the lame. He would have almost certainly gotten a good answer. But he didn't. Jesus chose to ask his question in the wilderness of Caesarea Philippi, with all the stuff of the world trying to steal everyone's attention away from him. Who do the people say I am? He asked. His disciples looked around at the busy city. Some looked down at their sandals on the ground. Some stroked their beards and stared off in the distance. Well, they began, some people say you are John the Baptist. Others say you are Elijah or Jeremiah or maybe one of the prophets. Then Jesus asked, who do you say I am? Jesus already knew what the world thought of him, but he most wanted to know what his closest friends thought of him. After all, they'd been following him for 2 years now. They'd seen at least a dozen miracles and heard countless sermons. Did they believe that he was who he said he was? Simon Peter may have thought for a while before he said, you are Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus must have smiled. You are blessed, Simon, he said. No one on earth taught you that truth. It was my Father in heaven who showed you who I am. And so you are Peter, which means rock. And I will build my church on this rock. Peter was not perfect. He made plenty of mistakes. But Peter believed that Jesus truly was the Son of God, and Jesus used that belief to begin building his church. Peter was an ordinary guy, but he chose to believe the promises of Jesus. One of those promises was given by Jesus when he said, I will build my church. There are 3 beautiful parts to his promise. The first is, who does the building? Not us, but Jesus. He is in charge and he never fails. The second part of the promise is will. Jesus didn't say, I might build or I hope I can build. He said, I will build. Once Jesus starts something, you can count on him to finish it. The last part of the promise is about what Jesus will build, a church. Jesus' church is simply a gathering of people who believe he truly is the Son of God. Not perfect or problem-free people, but ordinary people who are willing to follow him. When you believe and follow him, you also become a stone of the building of his church. You might need a little shaping, a little glue to hold you in place, but Jesus will use you to build his church. He absolutely will. He uses all of us, those of us who believe in him. He uses us to build his church. And I thought that it's kind of interesting that we talk about this today, because are we inside of the church building right now? The church building is closed, but is the church closed? It's not. Are we still church people? How are we still church people? What are you doing right now? You're watching Sunday school and you're learning about Jesus and Peter. How else are we church people? Maybe you're making cards for people who cannot get out right now. Maybe you are making signs or cards for those who are helping others, like nurses or police officers or frontline workers. What else could you be doing to be the church? Are you praying? That is an amazing, wonderful way to be the church, when you pray for other people who are having a hard time. Maybe they're sick or they're ill, or maybe they're struggling with everything that's going on right now. Do you miss the church building? I miss the church building, and that's okay. It is okay to miss those beautiful stained glass windows, and it's okay to miss the pews, and it's okay to miss the classrooms and the posters, and it's okay to miss the hallways that were full of noise and people that we love very much. And it's even okay to miss coffee and donut time. It really is okay to miss those things. But you know what I think? I think we're gonna have that time back. And right now, this is a wonderful time to see just how much the church is me and you and all of the people that make it up, and not just about the building. It's a wonderful, wonderful lesson that we can all learn. And it's something that especially us grown-ups have had to learn, because we missed it and we thought, well, we can't get in the building, but what about Bible school? You know what? We figured a way around that, didn't we? Well, but how are the kids going to learn about Jesus? We figured a way around that one, didn't we? But the food pantry, how are we going to get food to the people who need the food? We figured a way around that one too. God uses us. He doesn't need a building to use us, to be his people, to be his church people. And that is a super duper wonderful promise that he made to us. I love my church. Do you love your church? I do. I love my church people very, very much. This week in our Rainbow Connection, the Conley family is going to show us how we can make our own rainbow so that we can hold on to the promises that God has made to us and always keeps.
Hi, we're going to make a rainbow basically out of this by cutting it out and putting it in like here, and we will go over the steps. And also I find it best to draw over in a rainbow shape before doing it, because that helps drastically. First cut out the rainbow. Okay, so next step we're going to color it.
completed mine right here, and make sure you do it in red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Make sure you do it in that order. Like red. I had to trim mine because it was too short, so make sure you do it in nice and big strokes, wider, so then it'll all fit.
Now we are going to put the rainbow into the water. Here are the results. So, I like my rainbow because it's very colorful. For mine, really like mine, but because all the purple collected right in the middle. But I'd say purple is probably the most dominant color, and next time I probably want to make sure that I have an even amount of each color so then it's nice. And also make sure you put lots of ink because, well, it'll just help make it hold. All the colors, when they blend together, sometimes it looks really cool in some parts, like up here.
Thank you, Conley family. You did a great job. That looked like a lot of fun. Did that look fun? If you would like to do that activity, I'm going to put instructions for you in the comment section how to do it. It looked pretty easy, and I loved that the Conley boys gave you some tips on how to make it a little bit better. Because sometimes when we go to make an activity, we follow the directions and we think, oh, well, that didn't quite work. Something I really love that they told us, hey, maybe if you do a little bit darker lines, a little bit longer lines, a little bit thicker lines, it'll do even better. So I'm going to put those instructions for you in the comments. And I want to thank Anna, their big sister, for editing all that together. She did that. She did a beautiful job, and I want to thank her so much. And the whole Conley family for helping us out so that you can have your own rainbow too. Wouldn't that be fun? I think rainbows are super, super fun. Now we know that God keeps his promises to us, and we do try really hard to keep our promises to each other, right? We're practicing that. We're working on it. We try not to make promises that are bad for us to keep. Remember, we talked about that. We want to keep good promises, and we want to know when it's okay to keep a promise and know when it's something that we should not keep, right? We want to know about that. And did you know in the church we make promises? We do. We make promises to God, and God still makes promises to us in the church. He does. He promised to build the church, but did you know what else? He promises to love us even before we loved him. That's a mind-blowing moment, isn't it? Before we even know God, God promises to love us. I want to tell you about a sweet and special, wonderful promise, a covenant that we make most of the time with babies in the church, that we tell our baby, here's God, and we tell God, here's our baby, but you know what? God already knew all about him. I want you to watch this special little video about Charlie.
This is Charlie. Charlie's 19 months and loves to play with his barn and toys. But when he was just 5 months old, his family wanted him to be a part of the church. Being baptized is a special way God promises to love us and accept us as part of his family, even before we know anything about God. It's also a time when our church promises to support and love us too. It is always a special time when the congregation gets to welcome a new person into the church, and especially when it is a sweet little baby. Charlie's big brother and big sister proudly stand at the front of the sanctuary with their parents, excited for this moment to share their new family member with their church family. In the Methodist Church, we consider baptism to be a sacrament. A sacrament is a special event in the church because it's something Jesus both commanded and participated in. In a sacrament, God comes to us in a very special way. During a baptism of a baby or a small child, the minister will ask the child's parents a series of questions. These questions will be about how they will teach their child about Jesus and to love others and be raised in the church. Once the parents have answered "I will" to the questions posed, the minister will have his or her turn to hold the baby. At this time, they will ask for the baby's name. The pastor usually only uses the first and middle name for the child because all baptized Christians are part of the same family, God's family. So baptisms often don't use the child's last name. The minister will dip his or her hands in the water from the baptismal font and place those now damp hands on the baby's head. The minister will proclaim that this child has been baptized in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. We use water in baptizing just as water was used in Jesus' time. Jesus was also baptized, only not in a church, but in the Jordan River by John the Baptist. The water reminds us of Noah and God's promise, and Moses as he walked through the parted Red Sea as God saved his people. Water symbolized being washed clean and newness, like being new with God. Once the baby or child has been baptized, it is now a time for the minister to show the congregation its newest member. This is always a proud moment for all those who are involved in this special church moment. The people of the church always love to see a new member and welcome them into their hearts and their church family. Following the sacrament of baptism, there is often a small presentation of a few gifts: a candle that was lit during the baptism for the family to keep, a certificate of church membership, and here at our church, a special baby blanket made by members of our church.
How cute was baby Charlie? Maybe you were baptized as a baby or a small child. And even if you weren't baptized yet, you're going to have an opportunity when you get into the 8th grade and you go through confirmation class. That'll be another opportunity for you to get baptized. But even then, baptism is a promise from God to you. It is. And like we said last week, though, confirmation is a time when you make the promise back to God. We make lots of promises, and a promise to God is a super special one, and that's one we do not want to break. And that's what we're talking about, and that's what we're learning about. We want to be really careful with the promises we make to each other, but when we make a promise to God, that's something we have to pray about, and we have to be very sure about. Absolutely. And here at our church, and maybe at a church that you've visited before, maybe you've gone to a baptism at somebody else's church. Doesn't everybody get so excited when there's a baby to be baptized, and everybody oohs and ahs the beautiful baby, and sometimes they have a beautiful outfit on, and it's such a special day for everyone who is there. And I bet that maybe if you were baptized as a baby, it was a super special day for your family as well. I bet it was. Now, after those little babies get bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, you know whose turn it is? Mr. Dvorak gets them. Mr. Dvorak teaches 4th and 5th grade at our church. And since the church building is closed, but the church is not closed, she has been coming to us so that she can remind us to pray and to be prayerful during this time so that we don't forget about God. Because God's not forgetting about us, is he? He's not indeed. So here is Miss Dvorak's devotion for the week.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you back, to be with Mrs. Barbara Shipley and myself. We've got lots to chat about tonight, so I want you to get as close as you can to your computer because I have a very interesting story to share with you tonight. God promises he's never going to leave us. Even those people that are not so sure about believing, he's got a plan for them. And I know he does because of the story I'm going to share with you tonight. If y'all have ever ridden by my house here on Atlee Station Road during the Christmas season, you'll notice that there is a nativity there. And we always have a little production one weekend where we take our animals up there. Well, it stays up there sometime longer than Christmas and New Year's, and sometimes people ask us about it, but nevertheless, it's there. Well, you know, it's not there now. It's waiting to come back around the 1st of December. But just the other day at my nephew's house that is right next door to me here, there was a knock on the door. So my nephew's wife went there, and there was a man standing there on the steps, and he asked my nephew's wife, Debbie, are you all the ones that have the nativity scene up there at Christmas? She said yes. Well, then he came out with, you know, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything that y'all believe in. And my nephew's wife tried to persuade him, and he said, but I tell you what happened. A beautiful rainbow came out the other night, and he said, I've always wondered what was at the end of the rainbow. And he said, I followed it, and it ended about where the manger scene is at Christmas. Do you think God was working there? Do you think he was nudging that man? The man said even he took photographs, but he was crying. Tears were running down his face. And he told her, he said, you know, I think I understand what you all believe in. And then he left. God has amazing ways of working. Even this young man, God has not forgotten him. And God is working through you and me to help those people that don't believe. And to be honest, since we're not at church in the building, we are still the church, because we are out here to tell them about our Bible stories, and that's how we are the church, by talking about Jesus. So that was a good story, and it's all about that rainbow that only God puts up there in the sky. So now I think it's time for prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for letting me see your glory. It might take a while, but you touch everyone. And that's one of the most amazing things in life for me, is to hear these stories about how you do through other people. And that's you, boys and girls, me, Mrs. Barbara Shipley, everyone that talks to us about Jesus. They've been touched and they are loved. Help us each day to show our love to others. Help us to be kind, to be understanding. The rainbow is always up there. We don't always see it, but it's there. Thank you for your love. And thank you, as I say all the time, for being there and guiding us. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Dvorak. As always, it's such a wonderful, wonderful blessing to have her be able to talk to us in ways that maybe we didn't think about. I have a feeling that maybe the next time you see a rainbow, you're going to think about God's promise and maybe a special message that's just for you. Maybe not just for you, maybe for someone else. Rainbow could be very much a message. And I want to keep your rainbow messages coming, okay? I love seeing your rainbows, and I'm using them during my Sunday school lesson, so keep making them, okay? So that I can turn them and show them to everyone, because you guys are beautiful artists. Think outside the box. You could use anything. You can use crayons, you can use markers, you can use sidewalk chalk, Legos, socks, whatever you want to do. Turn your imagination loose. But don't forget that you are loved. Have a good week.